Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our program on the Nectar of Devotion, which is a summary study on the book written by Srila Rupa Goswami Bhaktivedanta Sindhu. The author of this book, Nectar of Devotion, is Srila Prabhupada. We have already covered chapter number 1 of this book. Today we are going to start chapter number 2, the title of which is The First Stages of Devotion, and this is our 6th class on this course. Please let me know who was who was decided by Rakesh Prabhu for Mangalacharan prayers. Let me check my message list. Mangalacharan is by Anuradha Mataji. Mataji, would you like to lead us for the Mangalacharan prayers? Anuradha Mataji, can you hear? Hare Krishna, Anuradha Mataji, can you hear me? Okay, I don't. Yeah, Uma Nath's phone. Mataji, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself? We lost Anuradha Mataji. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think I will take the lead for chanting the Mangalacharan prayers, and then we will proceed with the class. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamarupaha Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Now we come to the next part of our class, which is the summary of the previous class, class number 5. So the summary was supposed to be spoken by Jivan Radha Govind Prabhu, but for some reasons, and I think he mentioned to me, he is not feeling well. He's down with illness, so he requested me to proceed with the summary myself. So let me do the summary of this class all by myself. So in the previous class, we completed our discussion on the qualification of pure devotional service, Uttama Bhakti. And in the previous class, we covered the last 4 qualifications. There are total 6 qualifications, and we covered the last 4 qualifications. And the third qualification in that list was Moksha Laghuta Krit. So Moksha Laghuta Krit means Bhakti makes liberation look insignificant. So the meaning of moksha is liberation, and Laghu means to make small. So the joy, the pleasure in Bhakti is so nice that even the joy of moksha also seem very, very insignificant. And in order to discuss Moksha Laghuta Krit, we gave you a couple of stories, couple of references as given by Srila Rupa Goswami. And some of the noteworthies are the story of Kolavech Sridhar, which appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was very pleased with the devotional attitude of Kolavet Sridhar, he offered him many, many opulences, but Kolavet Sridhar denied all those opulences because he always wanted to be in the pure devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Also, we discussed a reference from the scriptures where it is mentioned that Bhakti is like the queen, and all other siddhis, including the siddhi of liberation, is like the maid servant. Then we discussed about the fourth qualification, which is Sudurlabha. Sudurlabha means very, very rare, very rarely achieved. And in that regard, we discussed how this Bhakti Sudurlabha, we discussed two levels. One is sadhana without asakti and sadhana with asakti. So here we should not confuse the word sadhana with sadhana bhakti actually. Sadhana here in this context actually means those activities which the practitioner is doing in order to improve himself, herself, in order to purify and so on. So for different transcendental paths, there are different sadhanas. So sadhana without asakti would mean that trying a lot for purifying oneself, trying a lot to advance on the path of a transcendental journey, but without having asakti, without having attachment for the Lord. So here we understood that sadhana without asakti is something like our own endeavor. And we understood from scriptural examples that if we don't have any attraction for the Lord and we continue to do all kind of other sadhanas, then we cannot achieve pure devotional service. No chance that we can achieve pure devotional service. So that was sadhana without asakti. Then sadhana with asakti would mean that now we are doing sadhana and there is some asakti also. But pure devotional service is so rare and it is so durlabh that Lord does not give it very easily. So Lord Krishna is very, very reluctant to give pure devotional service. And there was a reason why he is very reluctant to give pure devotional service, because once he gives pure devotional service to someone, then he becomes bound by that devotee, and the devotee can control Lord Krishna. So it is something like, as I mentioned in the previous class, it is something like writing a power of attorney for someone where someone else can make any decision on our behalf, and so we would not want to do that kind of a act unless and until we are 500% sure that the person is really, really attached to us and will not consider any harm for us. So it is something like that. So that is why Uttama Bhakti is very, very rare. Then the fifth qualification, we discussed about Sandra Anand Visheshatma. Sandra means condensed, very dense. Anand means bliss, and Vishesh means special. So the bliss or the Anand in Bhakti is composed of very, very condensed bliss. And we discussed this point, what is meant by condensed bliss. So as I mentioned in the class, that if we have air, it is not at all dense. Then we have liquid, some more dense. Then we have solids like steel. It is very, very dense. So if in steel we want to pierce anything, it cannot enter inside. Similarly, the pleasure or the bliss in Bhakti, Uttama Bhakti, is so dense that no other pleasure actually can penetrate the pleasure of Uttama Bhakti. That is Sandranand Visheshatma. And we discussed several references as given by Srila Rupa Goswami in order to support that point. Then coming to the final qualification, which was Shri Krishna Akarshini. So Shri Krishna Akarshani means Bhakti or Uttama Bhakti attracts the attention of Krishna and his associates, his pure devotees. They also get attracted by the person who is at the level of Uttama Bhakti. That is Shri Krishna Akarshani. And we gave an example that how uh, Lord Krishna's name is Madan Mohan. So Madan means Cupid, Kamdev, and Kamdev has these flower arrows. So if Kamdev wants to attract anyone, he shoots these flower arrows, Pushpaban. So everyone gets attracted towards Kamdev because of his beauty. But Lord Krishna is so beautiful that even Kamdev gets attracted towards Lord Krishna. However, pure devotional service, Uttama Bhakti, is so even beautiful, so even much more beautiful, that even Madan Mohan, even Lord Krishna gets attracted towards the pure devotee. And who is the topmost pure devotee? We discussed topmost pure devotee is Srimati Radhika. Then in the concluding section of the chapter number 1, pure devotional service. So the final verses in this chapter talks about an important concept where Rup Goswami mentions that these 6 qualities of devotional service are actually gradual, and they appear to each in each of the stages of bhakti. And we discuss these 3 stages of bhakti. We discuss bhakti can be divided into 3 stages. One is sadhana bhakti, then the next one is bhav bhakti, and the third one is prema bhakti. And we have 6 qualities. So the first 2 qualities, which is kleshagni and shubhada, these first 2 qualities we can see in the first stage. So when we start to do sadhana bhakti, bhakti by practice, we see that our kleshas are going away, our life is become much more auspicious, much more happier, and so on. So we see these 2 stages or these 2 qualities manifesting in the first stage, sadhana bhakti. As we gradually continue to progress and do sadhana bhakti much more sincerely, much more dedicatedly, we get the taste of sadhana bhakti, we start doing it almost like as a natural attraction for the Lord. Then slowly and gradually we attain the stage of bhava bhakti. And in bhava bhakti, the next 2 qualification also manifest. And what are those 2 qualification? Moksha lagutakrat and sudurlabha. These 2 qualification manifest in bhava bhakti stage. So in bhava bhakti stage, we have all the 4 qualification. The first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. So we have kleshagni, we have shubhada, we have moksha lagutakrat, we have sudurlabha in the second stage, which is the bhava bhakti. And in the final stage, which is prema bhakti, we get Sandranand Visheshatma, and we also get Shri Krishna Akarshini. So like that, 2 of each of these 6 qualities, they appear in the 3 stages of bhakti, 2 in the first stage, next 2 in the second stage, and the last 2 in the third stage. And we showed you a nice diagram there to capture that thought. Then we ultimately discussed in the concluding slide of the previous class was that the bhakti is independent. Bhakti is not dependent on anything else. When we feel attracted towards the Lord, it is mainly because we have done bhakti in the previous life. That is why our attraction for the Lord comes. But the question might arise that when did it start? Because it cannot go, if we continue to go life before life before life and so on, if we keep on regressing back and back, then at least there might be some point where the bhakti might have started. So the answer for that was that bhakti starts when the pure devotee of the Lord have mercy on us, causeless mercy, ahayatuki kripa. So when we come in contact with some devotee like that, pure devotee like that, he gives us some, he inspires us, he attracts us, he speaks some words to us, we hear some kirtan from the devotee, or we eat some prasad cooked by a devotee and so on, then that kind of a bhakti or sukriti arises within us, and that's how our bhakti starts. So bhakti is independent, bhakti comes from bhakti, and For those who are with zero bhakti, a pure devotee's causeless mercy starts their bhakti. So this is the sum and substance of the previous class in very succinct words. Hope that was useful. Now we will continue our discussion and we will start today chapter number 2 of this book. And these are some of the initial slides I have kept everywhere. So you will know that 4 divisions of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, east, west, north, south. We are in this particular program are discussing the first division, which is the eastern division, and each of these divisions are divided into chapters which are known as waves. So the eastern division has got 4 chapters, means 4 waves. And today in the previous class, in the 5th class, we had covered completely the first chapter, which is the Samanya Bhakti. And today today we will start our discussion on start our discussion on the next chapter, which is Sadhana Bhakti. Yeah. Then okay, so this was chapter number 2. Now you can see chapter number 2 is a very long chapter. This chapter, Sadhana Bhakti. Practically, you can see the whole Eastern division is largely this Sadhana Bhakti, and you can see that how many verses are there. There are 309 verses. So these 309 verses include the verses which Srila Rupa Goswami has written himself, and all those verses which he has extracted from the scriptures to give references. So you can see here this Sadhana Bhakti chapter number 2, which is wave number 2 of Eastern division, can be divided into 3 areas. And what are those 3 areas? So type of Uttama Bhakti. So here we will once again have a little idea about sadhana, bhav and prema bhakti, some general idea more than what we have already studied so far. Then the largest section of this chapter number 2 is about Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti. So sadhana bhakti can be divided into 2 parts. One is Vedhi and the second one is Raganuga. And I will explain you in the class what is Vedhi and what is Raganuga, what is the difference between Vedhi and Raganuga. And these are the different themes and sections within Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti. So today, in today's class, we are going to discuss this type of Uttama Bhakti, verse number 1 to 5. And then we will also discuss the first part in the Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is the definition of Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, and try to elaborate upon that discussion, go a little more deeper, go a little more refiner into understanding that definition. So I will not go into the details of each of these sections. Maybe as we progress, I will try to introduce you to that part when we do it in the future classes. So suffice it to say, we are going to discuss first bullet, second bullet, and the first bullet of the second section, which is the definition. Okay, this is a table I have prepared just to map the chapters of Nectar of Devotion with the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verses. Now you can see introduction we have covered, and these are the verses in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Chapter number 1, characteristic of pure devotional service, which is the title of this chapter in the Nectar of Devotion written by Prabhupada. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we have covered these from 13th verse to the 43rd verse of the first chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We have covered that. Now in the chapter number 2, chapter number 2 of Nectar of Devotion starts with some remaining verses of chapter number 1 of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and then it proceeds with the verses in chapter number 2. So here you can see 1.2.13. So this is, we are going to discuss today chapter number 2. We will finish chapter number 2 when we end the class. We expect to finish chapter number 2, but now you can see how this chapter number 2 is spread largely in this Eastern division, 2 like that. You see, till chapter number 10 of Nectar of Devotion, we are still discussing chapter number 2 of Bhaktivedanta Sindhu. Similarly, in this course, we are going to discuss only 19 chapters of Bhaktivedanta Sindhu, and you see till chapter number 16, we are discussing the chapter number 2 of Bhaktivedanta Sindhu. Then comes, this is all you can see Sadhana Bhakti. Chapter number 2, from chapter number 2 till chapter number 16, it is only Sadhana Bhakti. And then chapter number 17 and chapter number 18 is the third chapter of Bhaktivedanta Sindhu, which is about Bhava Bhakti. And ultimately in chapter number 19, we will discuss about Prema Bhakti. So it has been discussed very briefly in 21 verses. So we will, this is the composition of the chapters of Nectar of Devotion according to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verses as we find in the original book. Okay. So we start the chapter number 2. And a part of chapter number 2 of Nectar of Devotion we studied in our previous class. So we will start from the section which we did not study in the previous class. So fresh part. So Rup Goswami opens this chapter number 2 of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu with a general statement, and he mentions here that Uttama Bhakti can be classified into 3 types. We have already discussed this part. Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. Sadhana Bhakti means Bhakti in practice. Bhava Bhakti means Bhakti in ecstasy. And Prema Bhakti means Bhakti in pure love of God. Now, in order to advance into this discussion, we will have a little understanding, little deeper understanding of what each one of these means. What is Sadhana Bhakti, what is Bhava Bhakti, and what is Prema Bhakti? What is the difference between each one of them? We will discuss this at a high level. So from this slide, you will be able to pick up the difference between Bhava Bhakti, Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So Bhava Bhakti is not considered in Sadhana Bhakti. What the statement means is that when we talk about Sadhana Bhakti, we are not talking about Bhava Bhakti. So what is the difference? Bhava contains direct realization of Krishna. So Bhava is that stage in our Uttama Bhakti where the practitioner already have direct realization of Krishna. But do we have direct realization of Krishna? Do we understand Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead? Maybe theoretically we understand, but directly we don't have that realization in our heart. We still believe it because we have read it, because we have some conviction that the Shastras are telling it, so we accept it and so on. But otherwise, we don't have, or in general, the devotees does not have, or those devotees who are at the level of sadhana, who are the neophyte devotees, who does not have direct realization of Krishna. So at the sadhana stage, when we do sadhana, actually our goal is to reach towards bhava stage. Our goal is to reach towards bhava stage. Means we don't have that realization, direct realization of Krishna, but we want to practice under the guidance of the spiritual master, under the guidance of the guru, follow the scriptures, follow the rules and regulations as we will study in this chapter, and slowly and gradually we would like to progress and have that kind of a bhava in our heart where we will be convinced that Lord Krishna is there, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we accept Him as Supreme Personality of Godhead, not only theoretically, but that is a realization we have, that is a anubhuti we already have. So it is a very advanced stage. And goal of sadhana bhakti is to come to the level of bhava bhakti. That is actually sadhana bhakti. Then little difference between bhava bhakti and prema bhakti. So bhava bhakti and prema bhakti already at a very exalted platform, but when we talk about bhava bhakti, then we should understand that still there are some anarthas, there are still some offenses, some aparadhs that are still existing in the heart of the devotee. Although he is at a very exalted level of bhava, but still there is some tendency of some anarthas. Some anarthas are there. Anarthas, you know, kam, krodh, lobh, moh, mad, matsarya. Lust, anger, greed, pride, illusion, envy. LAC pi, like the acronym we have made. Aparadhs means aparadh towards the Vaishnavas, aparadh towards other living entities, maybe towards the Lord Himself in different ways. So those aparadhs are still existing in the bhava stage. Some, but in a very small quantity. And the rasa does not manifest fully in bhav. The rasa means the love of God is not fully manifested at this stage of bhav. It is there, but not fully manifested. So that is where we should understand this is the difference between sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. So the goal of sadhana bhakti is to reach bhava bhakti, where we have direct realization of Krishna. In sadhana bhakti stage, we do not have direct realization of Krishna. And in bhava bhakti and prema bhakti, at the bhava bhakti stage, there are still some offenses, some anarthas present in the heart of the devotee, and the love of Godhead is not fully yet manifested in the stage of bhava. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami gives the definition of sadhana bhakti. Like you have seen, Rupa Goswami had given the definition of Uttama Bhakti. That was the definition we discussed in the chapter number 1. Definition of Uttama Bhakti, and then 6 qualifications of Uttama Bhakti. That's how we proceeded. Now we are discussing about Sadhana Bhakti, and here Rupa Goswami is starting with the definition of Sadhana Bhakti. We just now discussed a little bit briefly about that definition in the previous slide, but let us see what Srila Rupa Goswami has mentioned in this verse about Sadhana Bhakti. So Rupa Goswami is mentioning here, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava sa sadhana bhidha nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam vidhi sadhyata. So what Rupa Goswami is saying here is, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya. Kriti sadhya means Kriti means engaging our senses. Senses here means the knowledge acquiring senses as well as the working senses. So knowledge acquiring senses are sense of seeing, sense of smelling, sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of taste. So these are 5 knowledge acquiring senses. So we acquire knowledge of our surroundings by these senses. And there are 5 working senses like our hand, our legs, our voice, and the 2 genitals. So these are working senses. We work through these 5 senses. So Kriti Sadhya means practice of bhakti executed with senses. Here please pay attention to the word practice, and we will discuss a little bit about this word practice also. Practice in Hindi would mean abhyas. Hindi or Sanskrit, it would mean abhyas, means to practice. Like we want to learn something, so we practice, we do some abhyas, and that's why we gradually become more perfect, even more perfect, and so on. So Kriti Sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava. Kriti Sadhya bhavet sadhya bhava. Sadhya is here, sadhya is Lord Krishna, is the goal. So sadhya bhava. Once we do kriti, once we do some practice with our senses, what this produces bhavet, it produces the stage of bhava. Bhava for what? Bhava for the sadhya. Sadhya is Lord Krishna. Sadhya bhava. And that is called sa sadhana vidha. And that is called sadhana bhakti. Practice of uh, yeah, practice of bhakti executed with the senses, which produces the stage of bhava, is called sadhana bhakti. Then uh, now there is a second line also given here, and that is uh, giving you a very important, a very significant clarification about what kind of practice is this. So nitya siddhasya bhavasya प्राकट्यम हृदि साध्यता. नित्य सिद्धस्य भावस्य प्राकट्यम हृदि साध्यता. Now what this line means is, this bhava is not artificially created but is eternally existent. Nitya siddhasya bhavasya. So nitya means eternal, always. Siddhasya bhavasya. So this bhava is eternally present. And when we do devotional service with practice, when we do sadhana bhakti, then prakatyam hridi sadhyata. So in our heart, it is prakatyam. It simply revives, it simply manifests, it simply appears, and is simply manifested by the Lord's spiritual energy. So nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. So in this second line, what kind of a clarification is given here? See, the clarification given in this line is that when we do sadhana bhakti, when we practice something, it is not something which we are creating in ourselves artificially. Bhakti is already present within our heart. What we are simply trying to do is, when we practice bhakti, that bhakti which is already present in our heart in a dormant stage, it manifests once again. So an analogy can be given here. Like for example, when a person forgets, he loses his memory. In many Bollywood movies, you might have seen that the hero met with an accident, and somehow he was saved. And when he was saved, he was asked, "What is your name?" And the hero says, "What is my name? I forgot my name." And like that, he kind of loses his memory. So similarly, but the hero had a name. Hero had a name in the past. That was for sure. Hero had a whole life in the past. Similarly, bhakti in our heart is already there, but that bhakti is covered with the impurities. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsarya. All that impurities, all that anarthas is covering that bhakti. Similarly, like that hero, when he is once again brought back into his original life, maybe he was a businessman living in a particular house. So when he lost his memory, he is once again brought back into that house. He uses those articles which he was using in the past also. And one fine day, slowly and slowly, when he uses some article, he's playing with something or he's using something, his memory starts to once again manifest back. So similarly, that's what happens in sadhana bhakti, which means when we do these practices of sadhana bhakti, the bhakti which is already present within our heart in a dormant stage, in a covered stage, once again starts to come back slowly and slowly. So you see here, this fact which I am explaining to you has been mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the Nectar of Devotion book using several sentences. So let us see what are those. Sadhana Bhakti is employing our mind and senses, knowledge and working, knowledge acquiring senses and working senses, in practical devotional service of Krishna to awaken our dormant and natural love, bhava and prem for Krishna. So this bhava and prem is already there in our heart for Krishna. But when we start to do sadhana bhakti, what are we trying to do? We are employing our mind and senses so that we can awaken our dormant and natural love for Krishna. As I was giving you an analogy of a person who has lost his memory, Srila Prabhupada has given a few other analogies in his book, and he has given this analogy of a child. So when a child is very young, maybe 1 year old or 6 months or maybe 1.5 year old and so on, and the child is not yet able to walk. So it does not mean that the child cannot walk. The capability is already there in the child for walking. But when the child makes some practice, make an endeavor, that capability is revived and it is manifested and the child is able to walk. Capability of walking is dormant in a child, it is awakened by practice. So this is one analogy, another analogy Srila Prabhupada gives regarding sadhana bhakti. Similarly, love for Krishna is dormant due to contamination, it is awakened by purification. So what happens when we do different activities of sadhana bhakti, like chanting, like hearing Krishna Katha, like associating with devotees, like going for some pilgrimage in the holy place of the Lord, or eating prasad, taking darshan of the deities in the temple, hearing kirtan or singing kirtan, like that. There are many activities in sadhana bhakti. So when we do these activities, then there is a purificatory process acting on our anarthas. It is acting. And as it continues to act, as it continues to purify, that dormant love and bhava, that bhava and prem for Krishna is coming out slowly and gradually, like that. Like as the analogy of the child is given, the child when practice walking, the capability of walking slowly comes back, like that. Similarly, another example is given by Srila Prabhupada, and this example is about analogy of madness. Now we are forgetting the Supreme Lord, so we are acting like a mad person. If a person forgets about his original identity and this forgetfulness is very severe, then it is something like a mad person. So spirit soul is originally pure, but it becomes mad due to vikarma. So like that, we are also very pure. The soul is soul in its original state is pure, but because it comes in contact with the matter, and the matter effect of the matter is there on the soul, it acts in different kind of sinful activities, vikarma. So sadhana bhakti cures from the madness, same as a psychiatrist cures a man's mental disorder. So our guru, our spiritual master is something like a psychiatrist, and he gives this medicine of sadhana bhakti, or this gives reform program of sadhana bhakti. Like the psychiatrist might give a person suffering from a mental disorder to do some activities, maybe do exercises, avoid these things, do this kind of watching of different kind of movies, inspirational movies and so on, so that you feel more enlivened, you feel more enthusiastic and so on. So like the psychiatrist gives a formal program to cure the mental disorder of its patient, similarly a spiritual master also gives us the program of sadhana bhakti to cure us of our mental disorder of mad in madness forgetting our supreme Lord Krishna. So these two analogies have been given by Srila Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion. As I mentioned to you when we discussed the definition of sadhana bhakti, when we discussed the definition of sadhana bhakti, let me take you back to that slide. We discussed that sadhana bhakti means practice of bhakti executed with senses. So the word used was practice. Now, couple of minutes to understand this word practice. So, Srila Prabhupada in the book Nectar of Devotion clarifies that when we talk about the word practice, actually, uh, when we talk about the word practice, to explain the process of sadhana bhakti, the word practice is not sufficient enough to describe this process of sadhana bhakti. It describes largely, mostly it describes, good 90% it describes the process of sadhana bhakti. But the reason for this is that the word practice is connotates to a skill that one does not possess. Like, for example, I do not possess the skill of playing maybe cricket. I do not have that skill. But when I practice playing cricket for a sufficient number of time, I develop that skill. It was not there within me in the past. Originally, it was not with me. But by practice, I learned the skill of playing cricket. So the word practice is insufficient to describe the process of sadhana bhakti, because as the word practice connotes to the skill that one does not possess, in bhakti, in sadhana bhakti, we already possess bhakti within our heart, as it is mentioned in the definition. We already have bhakti within our heart, and sadhana bhakti only uncovers it. So practice is more towards developing a skill, and sadhana bhakti is more towards uncovering the bhakti already present in our heart. Like, for example, we have sun outside. When we go outside our house in the open, we will have sun, but sometimes the clouds are there, so we cannot see the sun. But when the cloud disappears, we can see the sun. So bhakti is like that. So it is already like sun hidden our heart, and the cloud of anarthas is covering that sun. And when we do sadhana bhakti, when we do the practices of bhakti, that cloud of anarthas dissipates, and the sun of bhakti manifests. It rises within our heart. Like that, we should understand the process of sadhana bhakti, how it works and how it acts on our consciousness. So the word practice, you can understand from that. Then a little bit more, we will try to understand these two words, sadhana and bhava. I already gave you a little definition or difference between sadhana and bhava. We do sadhana to attain bhava. We do sadhana to attain bhava. And sadhana is what? Sadhana is practicing some activities with our working senses, with our knowledge acquiring senses. Sadhana means to engage our mind and senses in work for Krishna. That is sadhana. But so to someone it might appear like a mechanical process. For example, if I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is mechanically I chanted these names. Mechanically I chanted this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the point is, can some mechanical thing produce bhakti? Can some mechanical activity produce bhakti? It is not possible. Only bhakti can produce bhakti. Bhakti is only produced by bhakti itself. So, what does it mean? It means that if we do our sadhana in a mechanical way, without having any bhava, without having any genuine longing for the Lord, any genuine aspiration for the Lord, then this sadhana will be a failure, will not really work on our consciousness. Sadhana, when produced by genuine longing, sadhana has the potential to awaken bhava bhakti. Sadhana has the potential to awaken bhava bhakti. What this means is, when we do chanting for the Lord, so we have to do chanting for the Lord at least to have some asakti, some bhava for the Lord. Oh my dear Lord, I have been forgetful about you for so long. I'm chanting your name. Please, please, kindly take me unto your lotus feet. Kindly give me some love for your lotus feet. Kindly give me some love for your service, like that. So there has to be some positive emotion towards the Lord. Now, to further explain you the difference between mechanical and bhava, you might have seen there are many singers who might be singing devotional songs, bhajans, but many of these singers might be singing devotional songs not for pleasing the Lord, not for making the Lord happy. They might be singing these songs mainly for commercial reasons, only for acquiring money, or maybe acquiring some fame. So if we want fame, then we do not get prem. This is the crux of the matter. Similarly, there are many other examples which we can give. Like, for example, Prabhupada always wanted that his books were distributed by his devotees or by his disciples or devotee of Lord Krishna. So Prabhupada has written many books, and he specifically wanted that if you do book distribution, that should be done by the devotees. Why? Because when the devotees do the book distribution, the devotees do with a devotional heart. Sometimes people say, how much is this book? People might say, this book is rupees 150. And the other person might say, I cannot give you 150. I can give you only 100 rupees. Then the devotees, out of their devotional love for the Lord, they think, no problem, you take it for 100 only, and then the rest balance 50 rupees he will invest in that dealing. Why? Because the devotee understands the emotion for the Lord, and the reason he gives that book to the other devotee at a lesser price is because he has that emotion for the Lord. He thinks maybe just because of 50 rupees, this person should not lose the opportunity to come in the contact of the Supreme Lord. This is the way the devotee thinks. Although sometimes we may not have to do always like that, but depending upon the situation, depending on the circumstances, the point I'm trying to make here, dear devotees, is that there is positive emotional inclination towards the Lord when we are doing our sadhana. And when we have that emotional inclination, our sadhana will progress to bhava and ultimately to prema. Okay. Then there are some references Srila Rupa Goswami start to give. We just now discussed the definition of sadhana bhakti. Now Rupa Goswami is giving some references from the scriptures, and this reference comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto. Here in this verse, Narad Muni is talking to Yudhishthir Maharaj, and what Narad Muni is telling to Yudhishthir Maharaj is that one has to fix the mind on Krishna by any means. Fix the mind on Krishna. That is the essence. So when we do the sadhana, our essence is to fix the mind on Krishna. And when we do chanting, chanting is actually one of the most powerful way to fix the mind on Krishna, because chanting involves only speaking the names of the Lord. So the mind have to get fixed up on the name of the Lord at least for some time. Even if we do inefficient chanting, not so efficient chanting, but at least for some time the mind will be fixed on Krishna. One has to fix the mind on Krishna by any means. So that is the essence of sadhana bhakti. Like we were talking about mechanical versus bhava. So the bhava has to come because we want to fix our mind on Krishna in a positive way, in a loving way. And how to fix the mind on Krishna? That is the duty of the spiritual master. It is the duty of the spiritual master to find ways and means for one's disciple to fix the mind on Krishna. Like Prabhupada has given a very elaborate program on how to fix the mind on Krishna. And the way we are dealing our classes on Bhakti Sindhu and other books. How are we doing this? We are first of all hearing the classes, then we are creating some questions, then the devotees are spending their time writing those questions. In all this process, what are we doing? We are fixing our mind on Krishna. While hearing the class, we are fixing our mind on Krishna. While writing the quiz, we are fixing the mind on Krishna. While discussing the quiz, once again we are fixing the mind on Krishna. So this is the sadhana we are doing. And with this sadhana, please be rest assured that you will certainly going to make progress. Certainly the anarthas of your heart are going to decline or going to reduce, and you will certainly going to experience auspiciousness if you continue to follow the process as prescribed in the scriptures. And in this last bullet, Prabhupada mentions in the book Nectar of Devotion that Lord Chaitanya gave us the powerful process of chanting Hare Krishna that immediately attaches our mind to Krishna. So we know very well about that. And okay, now we have discussed the definition of Sadhana Bhakti. We have discussed one reference from the scriptures where Rupa Goswami is saying that the essence is actually fixing the mind on Krishna, sadhana bhakti. Now, in this 5th verse of the 2nd chapter, Rupa Goswami is now telling us that sadhana bhakti is of 2 types. And what are those 2 types? One is Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, and the second one is Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti. Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti. So Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti means what? Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti means doing bhakti according to regulative principles. Vidhi, the word Vedhi comes from Vidhi. Vidhi means rules and regulations. So there are some rules and regulations. For example, devotees are given these rules: chant 16 rounds in a day, eat only Krishna Prasad, do not take intoxication, do not eat meat, do not play gambling, do not do gambling, do not indulge into illicit affairs, so on. So that is rules and regulations are given, and when the devotee follow those rules and regulations, that is Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti. Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti is what? Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti means is spontaneous devotional service rendered out of natural love and attachment for process of sadhana bhakti. Spontaneous devotional service rendered out of natural love and attachment. Now let me give you a little more clarity on the difference between Vedhi Sadhana and Raga Nuga Sadhana. So main difference between Vedhi and Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti are the source of inspiration. The source of inspiration in the 2 processes, Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti, are different. In Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, inspiration comes from outside. Outside means spiritual master, scripture, and so on. So, for example, and in Raga Nuga Sadhana Bhakti, the inspiration comes from inside. Inside means natural attraction, self-motivated. Like we see, there are some people who are motivated only when they are told to do something, and there are people who are never told to do something, but they have their own self motivation from inside. Now what happens is, when we do sadhana bhakti, we start with the Vedhi Bhakti stage, but as we continue to do Vedhi Bhakti, at one point of time we start some natural love and natural attachment to the activity of bhakti. Like for example, somebody might pick up the love or natural love for speaking about Krishna. Someone may pick up the natural love for singing about Krishna. Some other may pick up this natural love for decorating Krishna, organizing festivals for Krishna, collecting donations for Krishna, constructing temples for Krishna. But initially, that love may not be in that form. It may not be natural. He may have to follow the rules and regulations, follow the guidance of the spiritual master, orders of the spiritual master, instructions of the spiritual master to do that. And one example is given here. In the beginning stages, the devotee might want to wake up for doing arti because the spiritual master has recommended to do arti every day. The devotee does not have a very natural attachment for doing arti. He is doing arti without any attachment. He is doing arti simply because he has to do it. He has to check the list. That is why he is doing arti. But over a period of time, regularly, continuously doing arti like a tick box, he develops some natural attachment for doing arti. Now, when he wakes up, he cannot live. He is naturally drawn. I have to do arti. He feels very satisfied when he does arti. So that is what is the difference between Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. So Raganuga Bhakti and Vaidhi Bhakti are both under the category of Sadhana Bhakti. So Raganuga Bhakti we should not confuse with Bhava Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti we should not confuse with Bhava Bhakti. In Raganuga Bhakti we have natural attachment for performing sadhana bhakti for the Lord, the different activities for the Lord. But in bhava bhakti we have direct realization of Krishna. We have direct realization of Krishna. In Raganuga bhakti it may be possible that it is not that we have direct realization of Krishna. We are doing sadhana bhakti, but out of natural liking for doing sadhana. That is what is the difference between Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. So, in this chapter now, Rupa Goswami is giving definition of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Before, Rupa Goswami had given definition of Sadhana Bhakti. Now he is giving definition of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is one of the types of Sadhana Bhakti. And then you will see that a very large part of this chapter will be covered on Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and then we will jump on Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So today what we are doing is we are mainly covering the definition of Sadhana Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and understanding a little bit in detail about these topics. So the definition of Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti is Yatra Raga Navap Tatvat Pravrattir Upajayate Shasanaiva Shastrasya Sa Vaidhi Bhaktir Uchyate Shasanaiva Shastrasya Cha Vaidhi Bhaktir Uchyate. So Vaidhi Bhaktir Uchyate means it is called Vaidhi Bhakti. This is called Vaidhi Bhakti. And what is called Vaidhi Bhakti is discussed in these two lines. Yatra rag na avap tatvat. Yatra rag na avap tatvat. When the activities of bhakti arise not out of attachment, that means raga, or natural taste for bhakti. Yatra rag na avap tatvat. Pravrattir upajayate. Pravrattir means natural taste. Pravratti means our nature. When the rag does not arrive, or when the rag does not arise because our natural taste, that is the meaning of the first line, and it is arising only because of, or we are doing this activity only because of something else. And what that something else is? Shasanaiva shastrasya sa. Shasanaiva shastrasya sa. Shasan means to rule, to follow, and whose order we are following? We are following the orders of the spiritual master, or shastra, shastrasya cha. According to the orders, shasan, shasanaiva, shasanenaiva, shastrasya cha. According to the orders of scriptures or spiritual master, as an obligation. As an obligation, we have to do it. There's no other way. We have to follow it. Sometimes people give this argument: do you naturally feel to chant for Hare Krishna? Do you naturally feel like that? So the answer is given here. In the beginning stages, we will not have that natural taste for chanting Hare Krishna. Right? That means we are doing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. We are simply following it because Prabhupada has said so, because scriptures is saying so. Out of respect for Prabhupada, our spiritual master, the scriptures, we are following that process. And we are following that process as much as with as much sincerity as possible, so that we can gradually progress in that process. So that is what the definition of Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti as coined by Srila Rupa Goswami. And some examples of sadhana are given here: rising early in the morning, worshipping the deity, etc. Now, Rupa Goswami is giving references from the scripture. And here he gives one reference from Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto. He says, Tasmad Bharat Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavyah Kirtitavyascha Smartavyas Checha Tabhayam Smartavyas Checha Tabhayam. So here the word comes is Bhayam. Bhayam means fear. And when this verse is spoken by Shukdev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj has already been now cursed by the Brahmana boy. And the Brahmana boy has cursed Parikshit Maharaj that you are going to die in next so many days. Now Parikshit Maharaj comes to Shukdev Goswami and asking that a person who is going to die soon, what he should do. Then Shukdev Goswami mentions to Parikshit Maharaj, one who desires to be free from all miseries and fears must hear about, glorify and remember Krishna, the super soul of all. Now here Parikshit Maharaj is not advising, Shukdev Goswami is not advising Parikshit Maharaj that because you have natural attraction for the Lord, you should do these kind of activities. But Shukdev Goswami is saying that if you absorb yourself in Krishna Katha, then you will become fearless. Krishna Katha has that potency to make you fearless, and you will become fearless of your death. So this is not an example of Bhava Bhakti, this is an example of Sadhana Bhakti, because there is no natural attraction for the Lord out of which Parikshit Maharaj is aspiring to hear and glorify the Lord. Although Parikshit Maharaj is a very exalted devotee, is at a very high platform, but the instruction given by Shukdev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj here is at the level of Sadhana Bhakti. It does not reflect any natural attraction for the Lord. However, it is mentioning that one should hear and glorify the Lord to become fearless. To become fearless. He is not yet fearless. That fearless is not yet there. But when he follow the process of hearing and glorifying the Lord, he will become fearless. So Maharaj Parikshit's hearing was within the realm of Vedhi Bhakti, because the impetus to perform it was not natural attraction to Krishna, but the desire to be fearless at death. That was the desire. We will move ahead. So we move to the next verse. Another example of Vedhi Bhakti in Padma Puran. What is this verse saying? Smartavya satatam Vishnur Vismartavyo na jatu chit Sarve vidhi nishedhasyur Etayoreva kinkaraha Sarve vidhi nishedhasyur Etayoreva kinkaraha. What this is saying is, in Padma Puran there is a verse which says, always remember Vishnu. Smartavyaha satatam. Satatam means always. Smartavyaha satatam Vishnu. Always remember Vishnu. Vismartavyo. Vismar. Vismar means forget. Na jatu chit. Never forget Vishnu. Sarve vidhi. Now you see the word vidhi has come. Vidhi, from the word vidhi, the word vaidhi comes. Sarve vidhi nishedha syur. Sarve vidhi nishedha syur. Etayor eva kinkarha. So sarve vidhi nishedha syur means all injunctions and prohibitions. Injunctions means do's, prohibitions means don'ts. All do's and don'ts. Etayor eva kinkarha. All do's and don'ts are actually dependent on these two rules. Which two rules? Always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu. So what here this verse is trying to say here is that if we are doing any activity if we are doing any sadhana, any activity for our transcendental benefit, for our spiritual benefit, and if that sadhana does not involve remembrance of Lord, if it is forgetful of the Lord, if we are doing sadhana in forgetfulness of the Lord, then that is not a very good sadhana. However, if we are doing something, some activity which may not be a very prescribed sadhana, if we are doing that activity but we are remembering the Lord, then what this verse is saying, that actually we are doing a good job. So the point here, dear devotees, is that ultimate goal and ultimate purpose of doing any sadhana is to develop remembrance of the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of sadhana. If our sadhana is devoid of any remembrance of the Lord, then that sadhana is of no use. That sadhana is simply a endeavor and simply a waste of time. Now here a small clarification. The word satatam here means every day, and it does not mean every second. Because this verse is mainly meant for Sadhana Bhakti, Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, and Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, it is impractical to remember the Lord every second. That is not possible. That is why the commentators of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Jiva Goswami, is mentioning here that here the word satatam means every day, not every second. At least every day we should remember the Lord. Continuous remembrance of Krishna is impossible in sadhana bhakti. It is possible in which bhakti? It is possible in say in bhava bhakti or in prema bhakti, like that it is possible there, but not in sadhana. Little more about this verse. What this verse is trying to say is that all rules are dependent upon remembrance of Vishnu. If one remembers Lord Vishnu, all other rules are accomplished automatically. If one forgets Vishnu, it is like committing prohibited acts, that is committing sins. So, for example, when we are following different rules and regulations of the scriptures, like for example, if our scripture is giving a rule that we should perform some havan, some yajna, and we are performing that havan, some yajna, without any remembrance of the Lord, then that yajna is of no use. And actually, while doing that yajna, we have committed a sinful act, because when we did this yajna, we did not remember the Lord. Ultimately, all these activities, all these work that we are doing in our life, the ultimate purpose, all the sadhanas that we are doing in our life, the ultimate purpose of all these sadhanas is to develop remembrance of the Lord. And if we are doing those sadhanas without remembering the Lord, then there is no good benefit of that sadhana. So Prabhupada, in the purport of Nectar of Devotion, in the book, he is mentioning that we should mold our life in such a way that we remember the Lord as much as possible. So you would see that in Indian tradition, in Vedic system, even from maybe 20-30 years in the past, you will see people will mold their life in such a way that everywhere they could remember the Lord. And I can give you some experiences from my own life. I born and brought up in a family which is a business family. So right from my childhood, I have seen that how when I would go to the shop, everywhere in the shop there were pictures of the Lord. There were pictures of various demigods. There were pictures of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, Durga Ji, etc., etc. And someone might wonder, what is the picture of Lord going to do at a place where you are doing your business? So the whole idea is, while even doing your business, when you look up, when you look here and there, at least your consciousness gets fixed up on those pictures for some time being, and that's how you grasp some remembrance of the Lord. Similarly, I have seen my elders, whenever they would write a letter, they would start writing first of all by writing Shri Hari or Ram Ram or Jai Shri Krishna, like that. So the first letter they would write, before writing a full text, they would write the name of the Lord. Similarly, we also can make our lives mold our lives in such a way where the remembrance of the Lord is very easy to have. We can put pictures in our rooms of the Lord. Every now and then when we watch these pictures, we can feel motivated, we feel inspired. Then more discussion is there in Srila Prabhupada's explanation of Nectar of Devotion in that summary study. Prabhupada says, Vedhi Bhakti must be followed by everyone within and outside the four varnas, social orders and ashram, which are spiritual orders. So just now we studied, always remember Vishnu, never forget Vishnu. If you follow these two rules, then all other rules are subordinate to these rules. So, Etayor eva kinkara. Kinkara means a very small, a very insignificant person to the servant. That is known as kinkara. So if we are now in varnashram system, we are either in a grihasthashram, we are in a brahmachari ashram, or when we are in a vanprastha ashram, which means retired life, we do many activities. Ultimately, if we do those activities without remembrance of the Lord, then that is not a good idea. And that is what this particular quotation reference from the scriptures are given here, from verse number 9 to verse number 11. So 3 verses are given, and the gist of those 3 verses are like this. So the Vedhi Bhakti must be followed by everyone within and outside the 4 varnas and ashram. So in these varnas and ashram, we perform many activities. Ultimately, the purpose of these activities is to please the Lord, is to make the Lord happy. And some further elaboration is given by Srila Prabhupada. 4 varnas and 4 ashramas have appeared from different body parts of the Lord. So another reference is given from the scriptures, which mentions in Bhagavad Gita also it is mentioned in 4th chapter, Maya Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishtam. These 4 varnas have been created by me. These 4 orders of life, social order of life, have been created by me. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, like that. And in Bhagavatam also, it is mentioned that these 4 varnas and 4 ashramas actually have appeared from different body parts of the Lord. And what are these? So Brahmanas, who are the thinking brains of the society, they have appeared from the head of the Lord. Kshatriyas, who are the administrators and who drives the society, they have appeared from the arms of the Lord. Vaishyas have appeared from the belly or the waist region of the Lord, because Vaishyas are involved in grain production, in food production, in business, and so on. And Shudras, because the Shudras are not intelligent enough to perform the role of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, so Shudras actually provide bodily labor to the other 3 divisions of the society, and that's where Shudras have come from the legs of the Lord. Similarly, Sannyasis come from head, Vanprasthas come from arms, Grahasthas comes from the belly or waist, and Brahmacharis come from the legs of the Lord. So the point here in this reference is that Varnashram system, which itself has come from the different body parts of the Lord, and when we are in this Varnashram system doing various kinds of activities, if we don't remember the Lord, then what is the fun? We are following a system which is coming from the Lord itself, and while we are in that system, if we are not remembering the Lord, then we have missed the point. That is the idea. And like different body parts, each varna and ashram has a different type of activity. I just discussed that. Everyone must be engaged in his particular duty, but the perfection of such work is how far the Lord is satisfied with such activities. So this is the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that in the Varnashram system, we are engaged as per our natural inclination. If we are a Brahmanical person, if we have that Brahmanical mindset, then we should be engaged in teaching and studying of the scriptures and so on. If we have a Kshatriya inclination, then we should be engaged in administration, we should be engaged in protection of the public and so on, like that. So I have given you some examples here, what Prabhupada is mentioning in the Nectar of Devotion. Brahmana should be engaged in preaching Vedic knowledge, and he should also accept prasad or food on behalf of the Lord. It is said that when a Brahmana who is engaged in preaching of the Vedic scriptures, when such a person is fed some food, that fed through that person is received by the Supreme Lord, directly received by the Supreme Lord. Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas need to protect the society from Maya. That's what Prabhupada writes. Maya means they should not become forgetful of Krishna. So they should feel secured, they should feel well governed, they should feel protected. And when they feel protected, they feel secured, well governed, then only they can do bhakti peacefully. So if needed, these Kshatriyas can also act in a violent way to protect the society. Similarly, Vaishyas produce agricultural produces, trade, and do distribution just to feed the society so that the society can live healthy, society can think of Lord, and so on. And like that, Shudras also help the higher classes of the body, higher classes of the society by doing bodily labor. Let me see how many slides are still pending. I think we are almost there. Yeah, this is the second last slide. About to finish. Okay, now if the whole society performs its respective duties and remains in Krishna consciousness, all the members will live peacefully and happily. This is another statement that Srila Prabhupada gives, that we should not think that only if we go back to Godhead, only if we go back to the spiritual world, then only we will become happy. In this world itself, if we are following the rules and regulations of the scriptures, we are following Varnashram, we are doing our activities while in Varnashram for the pleasure of the Lord, remembering the Lord, then our life will be very, very peaceful and we will live very, very happily. Even without being transferred to the kingdom of God, we will live peacefully and happily even in this world. That is the beauty of Vedic Varnashram system, if executed properly. Now, in these last two verses for today, number 12 and number 13, the results of Vedhi Bhakti have been given. So, in verse number 12, a material result has been given, and in verse number 13, a spiritual result or the topmost result has been given. So, what this reference means, this reference comes from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, where Lord Krishna is mentioning to Uddhav that by worshipping me through the methods prescribed in the scriptures, one will attain perfection. Here perfection means siddhis, and siddhis are on the material platform. You will become perfect both in this life and in next. So the point made in this reference is that if we do Vedhi Bhakti, if we do Bhakti in practice by following the rules and regulations of the scriptures, we will get good material benefits, perfect. We will become siddha. We will obtain siddhis. Siddhis means we will become perfect. We will get a lot of material benefit if we simply do Vedhi Bhakti. So Vedhi Bhakti has material benefit also. So here Prabhupada once again says one may continue in whatever occupation one has now. And here Prabhupada is saying that even if you don't know which varna, which ashrama you should follow, even simply you continue to follow this rule, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, then also your life will become successful, your life will become happy. Simply by worshipping Krishna, by the result of one's activities in Krishna consciousness, that will adjust the whole situation. So even if you are of a Kshatriya mindset, but you are performing some Brahmanical duty, you are not following Varnashram, but ultimately you are doing all these activity in Krishna consciousness, you are doing this activity by remembering Krishna, then Prabhupada says, don't worry, it will adjust the whole situation, because always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna is the ultimate goal even of our Varnashram. So even while you are not following Varnashram properly, but you are following the main principle, remembering Krishna and not forgetting Krishna, you will get the best result, you will get the best benefit. And in this 12th verse, you will get the material benefit, no doubt about it. And in the 13th verse, you get even the highest result. What is the highest result? Highest result is Krishna Prem. Any activity sanctioned in the revealed scriptures and aiming at the satisfaction of the Lord are accepted by saintly teachers as Vedhi Bhakti. By performance of bhakti under the direction of a guru, one attains prema bhakti. So here, this second bullet is saying, if you do any activity which is mentioned in the scriptures, but which is aiming the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, aiming the happiness of the Lord, then any such activity is accepted as a proper practice by the scripture, by the saintly people, by the sadhus, by the spiritual master. And if we do these activities under the guidance of a teacher, under the guidance of a spiritual teacher, then one attains the highest result, which is prema bhakti. So like that, in today's class, we have discussed elaborately about Sadhana Bhakti. We understood that the Sadhana Bhakti is of two types, Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Then we further elaborated on Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti. We understood finally that Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, performing of Vedhi Sadhana Bhakti, we not only achieve material benefits, but we also achieve the topmost, highest benefit, which is Krishna Prem. Like that, we will summarize the class today. Come to the conclusion. All glories to the Nectar of Devotion. All glories to Sri Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. All glories to Srila Rupa Goswami. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any questions, any comments, any discussion points you might have, we can discuss now. Thank you very much.
हरे कृष्णा।
हाँ जी प्रभु जी बोलिए।
इसका मतलब है, पहले तो दंडवत
धन्यवाद जी।
जी। मतलब ये है कि ये जो प्रेम हमको मिल जाता है साधना भक्ति से, दैट लीड्स अस टू मोक्ष और स्वर्ग।
प्रभु जी, prema is even higher than moksha. That's what we discussed in the previous class. Sandranand Visheshatma. So the nature of love, the nature of bliss in Uttama Bhakti is far beyond than the bliss we experience in liberation in moksha.
इसमें तो फिर हमारा आना जाना बंद हो जाता है ना मोक्ष के बाद, तो प्रेमा भक्ति में तो आना जाना चला रहेगा।
नहीं, उल्टा है। मोक्ष में a practitioner can fall down, but not in prema bhakti.
जी गुरु जी, थैंक यू गुरु जी, धन्यवाद।
Yeah, धन्यवाद। Hope the class was useful. Hope the class was understandable. It was not too difficult. First of all, maybe if you can give me that feedback, that will really help me.
It was very good, Prabhu. Understandable also.
Okay.
Prabhu, middle it as Wi-Fi was not connected, so I could not do Mangalacharan, Prabhu. Sorry.
No worries.
Prabhu.
Don't worry. Don't worry. No worries. No. It's okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Ishwar Prabhu. Yes, please.
It was really nice and we enjoyed every bit of it. I think most of it was very well conveyed and perhaps we were able to absorb, hopefully. Maybe we are able to reproduce also.
Yeah.
With this, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Now you can see how detailed analysis of pure bhakti or uttama bhakti has been given by our very, very learned acharyas like Srila Rupa Goswami. Such fine points and such detail. It is simply it has been analyzed in such scientific way, in such a nice way. I really feel very, very inspired when I read these books. Very, very nice.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Vasudevan Prabhu, welcome.
I just want to share two observations, which basically you learned from you. Yeah. One is in Bhagavad Gita also, in the 18th chapter, when Krishna talks about Satvika Tyagam, he says, whatever activity you do, you remember me and do it. And so everything accrues to me.
Correct,
So it's
correct.
coming back to the same thing. And in fact, there is a practice among South Indian Vaishnavas that any task we do, first we will take what we call sankalp. And that sankalp is that you are doing it, Lord, you are doing it, and for your benefit, you are making myself. I'm just the instrument happens with it.
Very
So I
nice.
think that's a very good way of putting it to practice.
Correct. Prabhu.
Second,
And
this thing that I want to share with you, sorry, bro, I'll just complete. Is you're saying about our practice of using names and of gods and various things, etc. There's a very interesting observation by one of Nigerians who was he was a ISKCON member. They were about 20 years back. He shared with me, or even more than that, 25 years back. So he said he was on a visit to India. He spent about a couple of years trying to as a ISKCON representative. He says one thing that always amazed me was I'll be going in a bus. I'll be sleeping. Suddenly I'll wake up in some town and I see the board. It's all names of Rama, Krishna, or one of the deities. Anywhere I look around, I see only the name of a deity. And he says it's, I was always amazed by that. So that's the extent of practice we have, but we don't recognize it. Somebody coming from outside recognizes much better than us.
Correct, correct. Now you remember when the government sometimes is changing names of cities, what actually it means, how important it can be. Naming a city on Lord Krishna's name or naming a city on Lord Ram's name, how relevant and how devotional it can be. So that is the, people say what is in the name, but there's a lot in the name, isn't it?
Right.
I was just mentioning the reference that you mentioned about Gita, that typically the verse is about Swakarmana tam abhyarcha, by your work worship me, where in the 18th chapter where Lord gives the explanation of Karma Yoga, and in the end it mentioned, the Lord mentioned Swakarmana tam abhyarcha, by your work worship me. Do your work in a way as if it is a worship for me. Remember me. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Those all very, very relevant, very nice, very useful, inspiring observations. Thank you very much.
Even Gandhi ji ka slogan tha, work is worship.
Work is worship.
Worship.
So that is not Gita's teaching. Gita's teaching is worship me by your work.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, so work is worship could be a good ethical principle in the society for people to not become lazy or not to become irresponsible. That could be used in that way, an ethical, moral guideline, but that is not what Gita is saying. Gita is saying, worship me. Me means here Lord Krishna, by your work. So there's a
अर्पण
difference
करके
between,
कर लो, ईश्वर को अर्पण करके कर, कृष्ण भगवान को अर्पण करके कर लो.
Yeah, work is worship means that even if you are doing some activity, you are trying to becoming so dedicated and committed for the activity, but you don't remember the Lord, then that does not become worship. That is the difficulty in this principle of work is worship. But when we say worship me by your work, here the stress is on remembrance of the Lord while doing your work. But when we say work is worship, we are simply considering our work as a very high level of activity where if we don't remember the Lord, then also it is okay. So that is not the teaching of it. Yeah. Good point,
Thanks.
Prabhu. Thank you for bringing that. Gave me the opportunity to clarify between the two. Okay. So I think if there are no other questions, I really appreciate for your patience in the beginning of the class today. We had to face difficulties, but next time I will be a bit more careful to test my laptop in the beginning and not to have that kind of a difficulty in the class. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Which one is the verse number in 18? Which one is the you were referring just now? Chapter 18, which verse?
I can tell you, Prabhuji, this should come somewhere around 50th verse of 18th chapter.
Okay.
Swakarmana tam abhyarcha. Swakarmana tam abhyarcha. You will find in the second line. Swakarmana tam abhyarcha. maybe 49th, 50th verse or 48th, 50th
Okay.
verse. If you check, it should be around
Okay.
that part. Yeah.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna Prabhuji, I have one last query.
Haji.
Sometimes you are made to do things which you don't want to do.
Mhm.
There are situations in life where you are forced to, or by some authority or your own weakness or some kind of pressure on you,
Mhm.
and you do certain things.
Mhm.
So what should we do? Should we do those things remembering Krishna? Will Krishna protect us in that situation also?
Yeah. I mean, this question could be best answered if you give the situation and we can discuss about alternatives. But the point is that we should make our best effort uh, to not to avoid any rules and not to forget Lord Krishna. That is for sure. Now, one situation could be that we are going on a business trip and we don't have any other choice but to eat food mixed with onion and garlic. That's the Vaishnav tradition, Vaishnav standard. So, if we are really in that kind of an emergency situation, then it is okay to take that food, beg forgiveness from the Lord, just to mention the Lord that I have to protect my life, I have to at least eat to stay properly energized, and that's why I'm doing this. But the idea is we make our best effort, but if there is no other option, then just uh, in an emergency situation we can do that. That is called apad dharma. Apad means emergency.
Self-preservation should be practiced in such situations.
Yeah.
We have to preserve ourselves first of all.
Sorry, Prabhu.
Self-preservation. Some efforts towards self-preservation.
Yeah. So there is a higher principle. Say for example, we don't recommend killing. But if there is a lady who is pregnant lady, but now the situation is that if you situation becomes like unless you kill the child, the life of the lady cannot be protected. Now, there for a higher principle, for saving a higher, a more evolved life, we are killing a less evolved life. That is something, another example. Yeah.
Right.
Guruji, does it holds true for meat also?
Sorry.
Does it holds true eating in emergency for meat or non-vegetarian?
Yeah. If you are in a army and you are in a jungle, you ran away from the prison of the enemy. Now you are in a jungle. You don't have anything else to eat. So in that case, if you kill an animal, eat the animal, that is okay. It's an emergency. It's an emergency. You have to survive. You have to survive, and there is nothing else to survive. Yeah.
Thank you, Guruji.
There's chapter 18, sloka 46.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Swakarmanatam abhyarcha. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, ji. Okay, then thank you very much. Thanks a lot. We will meet as usual in our next class next Sunday. Till then, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna ji. Dhanyavad.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Ishwar Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.